She was beaten in front of the town. A stranger stepped forward. She's my wife now. The dust didn't settle. It swallowed. It rolled across the town square like a living thing, thick, choking, golden brown, stinging Hattie's eyes as she knelt in the dirt, her lips split, her ribs screaming with every breath. The men who had held her down still stood over her, boots planted like stakes in the earth. Her husband, Jed Miller, spat on her cheek. "You'll learn," he growled, voice thick with whiskey and hate. A woman's place is silent. No one moved. Not the preacher in his frayed collar, clutching his Bible like a shield. Not the children huddled behind their mothers, eyes wide as dried apricots. Not even the dog that used to bark at her when she walked by. The wind carried the scent of burnt coffee, stale sweat, and something worse, the iron tang of blood drying on her dress. She hadn't done anything wrong. She'd asked for bread. Just one loaf. For her daughter, Lillian, who hadn't eaten since yesterday. The storekeeper had refused, said the ration was for men who worked. So Hattie spoke up. Said it wasn't right. Said the child was starving. Jed heard. And now, the whole town watched him break her. A rock hit her shoulder. Then another. Laughter followed, low, wet, cruel. She closed her eyes. Let me die here, she thought. Let the dust take me. Then, silence. Not quiet. Not still. Silence. Like the moment before a storm breaks. A boot crunched over dry earth. Slow. Deliberate. Hattie didn't open her eyes. She didn't dare. But she felt him. Tall. Lean. Cold. His shadow fell over her like a shroud. The crowd shifted. Breath held. He didn't speak at first. Just reached into his coat. Pulling out a small, rusted metal band. Sunlight caught its edge, dull, tarnished, but unmistakable. He dropped it onto the dirt between them. Then he spoke. 3 words. Quiet as a funeral bell. She's my wife now. Jed laughed. A loud, drunken snort. You're crazy, stranger. You think I'm gonna let some no-name drifter walk off with my woman? The man didn't blink. He stepped forward. 1 step. Then another. His coat hung loose, stained with mud and old blood. His hat was pulled low, but not low enough to hide the scar running from temple to jaw, white as bone, thin as a knife cut. He didn't reach for his gun. Didn't raise his voice. But his hand, the one not holding the ring, trembled. Not from fear. From grief. I found her in Fort Laramie, he said, voice rough as gravel. 10 years ago. She was 8. Barefoot. Starving. Crying for her mama. I buried her 3 days later. Her name was Lena. He looked down at Hattie. His eyes weren't angry. They were empty. Like a well that had swallowed every prayer. She looks just like her. Hattie's breath hitched. She lifted her head. Saw the ring. Saw the scar. Saw the man. And for the first time in 10 years, she remembered her own name. The crowd stirred. Murmurs rose like crows taking flight. Jed's face turned purple. You ain't got no proof. The stranger reached into his pocket again. This time, he pulled out a folded piece of paper, yellowed, brittle. He handed it to the preacher. The man unfolded it slowly. Gasped. Then whispered, Holy God, it was a marriage license. Signed in ink so faded it looked like tears. Hattie Mae Whitmore. Silas Boone. Date, March 17, 1879. Place, Sand Creek, Colorado. Witnesses, 2 names. One was smudged. The other, clear as sin. Lena Boone. Silas didn't say more. He bent down. Picked up the ring. Slid it onto Hattie's finger. It was too big. It slipped. But he held her wrist. Gently. Like she might break. I kept my promise, he said. Then he turned. Took her hand. And walked away. Behind them, the dust began to rise again. But this time, it carried the sound of weeping. Not from Hattie. From the preacher. And the little girl hiding behind her mother's skirt. Who whispered, "Mama, was that her husband?" No one answered. Because they all knew. Some promises don't die with the dead. They just wait. For the right moment. To rise. Wind howls, the cabin was half collapsed. Smoke curled from a broken chimney. Silas didn't lead her inside. Just stopped at the threshold. Turned. Looked at her. You can leave, he said. She didn't move. You don't owe me anything. She wiped blood from her lip with the back of her hand. Then she stepped past him. Into the dark. And sat on the floor. Where the smell of damp wool and old fire lingered. She didn't cry. Didn't speak. Just stared at the ceiling. Where a single nail held a scrap of cloth, faded blue. Her mother's scarf. She'd lost it in Denver. 10 years ago. She didn't know how it got there. Didn't ask. She just touched it. And whispered, "Thank you." Outside, the wind picked up. Carrying the distant clang of a train whistle. Somewhere beyond the hills. Someone was coming. And Hattie knew, with a cold certainty, it wasn't salvation. It was judgment. The bread was still warm. Silas placed it on the table, crust cracked, golden brown, smelling of wheat and wood smoke. Not store-bought. Not rationed. Made. By hand. With patience. Hattie didn't touch it. She sat cross-legged on the floor, back against the wall, arms wrapped around her knees. The wedding ring slipped again, too big, too loose, but she didn't take it off. Couldn't. It felt like a bone stuck in her throat. Alive. Heavy. Real. Silas didn't speak. He just watched her. From the corner. By the stove. His scarred hand rested on the barrel of a rifle leaning against the wall. The same rifle that had been fired 3 times last night, she heard the echoes through the thin walls. 3 shots. Each one followed by silence. No cries. No screams. Just the wind swallowing the sound. She wanted to ask who he'd killed. But she didn't. Because she knew. It wasn't Jed. It wasn't anyone from town. It was something older. Something deeper. He moved then, slow, stiff, and brought her a tin cup of water. She took it without looking up. The water tasted of rust and pine needles. She drank anyway. "You're not my wife," she said finally. He didn't flinch. "I know." "Then why?" He turned toward the window. Outside, the sky bled orange into purple. A single crow perched on the broken fence post. Watching. "My sister," he said, voice low as dirt under boots, "was beaten to death in this same town. 10 years ago. Same day. Same hour. Her name was Lena." Hattie's fingers tightened around the cup. Lena. The name on the license. The name on the grave. She asked for bread, Silas continued. Just 1 loaf. For her boy. The storekeeper said no. Her husband, he didn't stop them. He stood there. Smiled. Like it was a show. Hattie swallowed. Tasted blood. Tasted salt. Tasted fear. "I'm not her." No, he said. You're not. He walked to the shelf. Pulled down a small leather pouch. Opened it. Inside, two things. A lock of dark hair. Tied with twine. And a child's wooden horse. Chipped. Paint faded. One eye missing. He held them out. Not to her. To the air. As if she were already gone. I promised her, he whispered, that if I ever found another woman being torn apart like she was, I'd stop it. Even if it cost me everything. He looked at her then. Really looked. Not with pity. Not with guilt. With recognition. You're not her, he said again. But you're the same kind of broken. Hattie nodded. Didn't cry. Didn't thank him. Just bit into the bread. It was the best thing she'd ever tasted. Crust crackling. Inside soft as dawn. And for the first time since Lillian died, she didn't feel alone. That night, she slept on the floor near the hearth. He didn't sleep. Sat by the door. Gun across his lap. Eyes open. Listening. Outside, the wind carried the howl of coyotes. One long. Two short. Signal. He didn't move. Didn't react. But Hattie knew. They weren't alone. The next morning, she woke to the smell of stew. He'd made it. Rabbit. Wild onions. A pinch of salt. He set the bowl before her. Said nothing. She ate slowly. Each bite a prayer. When she finished, she wiped her mouth. Looked at him. Why did you come here? He stared into the fire. The bell tolled yesterday, he said. What bell? The church bell. At noon. He paused. Let the silence stretch. It tolled for Lena, he said. Every year. On the day they killed her. The whole town gathers. They don't mourn. They laugh. Drink. Dance. He pointed east. There's a train coming. Hattie followed his gaze. Far off, beyond the ridge, a thin line of smoke. Black. Thick. Moving fast. They'll be here soon, he said. The men who did it. The ones who laughed. She didn't ask who. She already knew. Jed. The storekeeper. The preacher. The sheriff. All of them. Silas turned to her. His eyes were darker than the storm clouds rolling in. I can't fight them all, he said. She nodded. I know. He reached into his coat. Drew out a pistol. Small. Old. Silver-plated. Worn smooth from use. He handed it to her. Take it. She didn't take it. I don't know how to shoot. He smiled. Not happy. Not cruel. Just tired. That's okay, he said. I'll teach you. She took the gun. It was cold. Lighter than she expected. But heavy in her palm. Like fate. That night, she dreamed of Lena. Of a little girl with braids, holding a wooden horse. Whispering, don't let them make you silent. Hattie woke screaming. Silas was beside her. Already dressed. Boots laced. Rifle slung. He didn't ask what she saw. Just handed her a canteen. Drink, he said. She did. Water tasted of iron. Like blood. Like truth. He opened the door. Wind rushed in, sharp, dry, carrying the scent of rain that wouldn't fall. Beyond the trees, the train whistle blew. 3 long notes. Then silence. Silas looked at her. Are you ready? She didn't answer. Just stepped outside. Into the dust. Into the dark. Into the promise he couldn't break. Train whistle fades, the church bell rang at dawn. 3 times. Not for prayer. Not for morning. For warning. Hattie heard it from the cabin's cracked window. A slow, heavy toll, each chime dragging through the morning like a chain pulled over stone. Silas was already gone. She didn't call out. Didn't search. She knew where he'd be. The graveyard. He went every morning. Always at first light. Always alone. She followed. Barefoot. Dust clinging to her ankles. The wind had turned colder overnight. Carried the smell of wet earth and old iron, like blood buried too shallow. The cemetery sat on a hillside, half swallowed by prairie grass. Crosses leaned like drunk men. Some marked. Most not. One stood apart, crooked, weather-worn, no name carved into its face. Just 2 initials, scratched deep. E.B. Silas knelt before it. His back was rigid. His scarred hand pressed flat against the stone. He didn't pray. Didn't weep. Just breathed. Slow. Deep. As if drawing strength from the dirt. Hattie stopped 10 paces behind. Didn't speak. Didn't move. She watched his fingers tremble. Watched the way his jaw clenched, not in anger. In grief. A grief so old, it had become part of his bones. Then, footsteps. Crunching gravel. 2 men emerged from the trees. One tall. Thin. Wore a stained vest stitched with buttons that looked like teeth. His hat was cocked sideways. Smiled like he'd just won a bet. The other, shorter. Bulky. Face swollen from drink. A fresh cut above his eye. He carried a bottle of whiskey. Swigged as he walked. Hattie froze. She recognized them. The storekeeper. And Jed's best friend, Cyrus Rattler Pike. They stopped when they saw Silas. Didn't laugh. Didn't taunt. Just stared. Like they were waiting for him to break. Silas didn't turn. Didn't rise. Just whispered, "You shouldn't have come." Rattler chuckled. "Ain't you the one who stole a man's wife? You think this town lets some ghost walk in and claim what ain't his?" Silas finally moved. Slowly. Stood. Turned. His eyes didn't burn. They drowned. "I didn't steal her," he said. "I saved her." Cyrus spat. "She ain't yours. She's Jed's. And you're dead already." Silas reached into his coat. Hattie held her breath. He pulled out nothing. Just his hand. The scarred one. Slowly. Deliberately. He rolled up his sleeve. Exposed the burn. From wrist to elbow. Skin curled like charred leather. "Do you remember this?" he asked. Cyrus blinked. Then his smile faltered. Rattler's whiskey bottle paused halfway to his lips. Silas took a step forward. "You were there," he said. "That night. In the barn. When Lena begged you to stop." Cyrus swallowed. "No," he muttered. "You're lying, Dot." "I'm not." Silas pointed to the scar. "This is where she bit me. Tried to get free. I held her down. Because I thought, if I kept her quiet, they'd leave her alive." His voice broke. "Just once. Then hardened again. But you didn't." Rattler stepped back. "That wasn't us. That was Jed. That was the preacher." Silas shook his head. "No," he looked at Hattie. Then back at them. "It was all of you." Silence. The wind stopped. Even the crows held their breath. Then Rattler laughed. A dry, rattling sound. "You're crazy, Boone. You think we care about some whore's death? We got laws here. You don't just take another man's woman. You don't drag her name through the mud like this." Silas didn't raise his voice. Didn't reach for his gun. Just lifted his left hand. From his pocket. He opened it. Revealed a ring. Small. Silver. Engraved with 2 initials. L.B. Hattie's breath vanished. Because she'd seen it before. On Lena's finger. In the photograph tucked inside the marriage license. She hadn't known it then. But now, she knew. Silas held it out. "Lena gave this to me the day we married," he said. "She said, if I die, let someone wear it who'll never let another woman suffer. I swore I would." He looked at Hattie. Then back at them. "She did." Cyrus lunged. Faster than his size suggested. Swung the bottle. It cracked against Silas's temple. Blood burst, dark, thick, running down his cheek. He didn't fall. Didn't cry out. Just wiped it with his good hand. Smiled. Weak. Sad. "Go ahead," he said. "Hit me again." Cyrus raised the bottle again. Rattler grabbed his arm. "Wait." He stepped forward. Looked at Hattie. Then at the ring. Then at the grave. His voice dropped, low. Unsteady. You really loved her." Silas nodded. "More than my own life." Rattler looked down. At his boots. Then slowly, he unbuttoned his vest. Pulled something from inside. A small locket. Tarnished. Dented. He opened it. Inside, a tiny portrait. A girl with braids. Smiling. Eyes bright. Lena. Rattler's hands shook. I didn't know," he whispered. "I thought she ran off. Thought she was a liar. Thought Jed was right to punish her." Silas didn't move. Just watched. Rattler dropped the locket onto the ground. Then he pulled out a knife. Slid it across the dirt. To Silas. "Take it," he said. "Do what you gotta do." Silas didn't pick it up. He looked at Hattie. She stepped forward. Walked past him. Kneeled beside the grave. Placed her hand on the stone. Where Lena's name should have been. Then she spoke. Voice clear. Calm. Raw. "My name is Hattie Mae Whitmore." She turned. Looked at Rattler. "And I am not your property." Silas closed his eyes. For the first time since she met him, he smiled. Cyrus roared. Swung the bottle again. This time, Silas moved. Fast. Too fast. He caught the bottle mid-swing. Twisted. Cracked it over Cyrus's knee. The man screamed. Collapsed. Rattler didn't run. Didn't draw a weapon. Just stood there. Tears cutting through the dust on his cheeks. "Tell her," he choked. "Tell her I'm sorry." Silas didn't answer. He just picked up the locket. Put it in his pocket. Then turned. Took Hattie's hand. Walked away. Behind them, Cyrus howled. Rattler sank to his knees. And cried. Not for himself. For the girl in the locket. Who'd once sung to him before bed. Who'd called him uncle. Who'd died screaming. And no one remembered. No one cared. Until now. Wind rises, back at the cabin, Hattie washed Silas's wound with rainwater and salt. He didn't flinch. Didn't speak. Just watched her. Her fingers trembled. Not from fear. From fury. I could have killed them, she said. You weren't ready, he replied. I'm ready now. He looked at her. Really looked. For the first time, not as Lena's ghost. Not as a burden. But as herself. You don't need to kill them, he said. What then? He reached into his coat. With his good hand. Drew out a second pistol. Older. Heavier. Engraved with vines. And a single word beneath the hammer, remember. He handed it to her. This belonged to Lena. She took it. Felt the weight. Felt the history. Felt the promise. I don't know how to use it, she whispered. He leaned close. His breath warm against her ear. Neither did I, he said. Until I had to. Outside, the wind carried the distant clatter of hooves. Not one horse. Many. Coming fast. Silas stood. Grabbed his rifle. Looked out the window. The sun had climbed high. The sky burned blue. And below, dust rose in waves. A line of riders. 10 of them. Sheriff in front. Jed beside him. Flanked by men with rifles. And behind them, the preacher. Carrying a Bible. And a noose. Silas turned to Hattie. Eyes steady. Voice soft. They're coming for you. She didn't argue. Didn't beg. Just nodded. And when he left, she locked the door. And whispered to the walls, I'm not silent anymore. Gunshot echoes in distance, the fire burned for 3 days. Smoke curled into the sky like a dying prayer, black, thick, endless. The townsfolk watched from a distance, silent as graves. Some crossed themselves. Others spat. A few wept, quietly, secretly, because they remembered the smell of bread in Silas's kitchen. Remembered how he'd left loaves on doorsteps when no one was looking. Remembered how he never asked for thanks. They called him an outlaw. A thief. A madman. But none of them dared say his name aloud. Not even Jed. Not after what happened at the church. 3 nights after the fire, Hattie returned. Alone. Barefoot. Dressed in Silas's coat, too large, smelling of ash and gunpowder. She carried nothing but Lena's pistol, tucked in her belt, and the wooden horse, wrapped in cloth. She walked straight to the graveyard. Kneeled beside the fresh mound of dirt. No cross. No marker. Just earth. She dug with her hands. Until her nails broke. Until her fingers bled. Then she buried the horse. Pressed it deep. Like planting a seed. When she stood, the wind whispered through the grass. And then, the bell rang. One slow, heavy chime. Clang. Hattie didn't move. It rang again. Clang. The preacher stood at the edge of the cemetery. In his Sunday coat. With his Bible clutched to his chest. Behind him, 6 men. Sheriff. Cyrus Rattler. 2 store clerks. 2 women who used to hand her scraps of bread. All silent. All watching. The bell rang a 3rd time. Clang. Then silence. The preacher stepped forward. His voice cracked like dry wood. We came, to bury you. Hattie didn't turn. I'm not dead. You took his life, he said. You stole him. You dragged this town through shame. She finally looked at him. Her eyes weren't angry. They were hollow. Like wells that had swallowed every scream. I didn't steal him, she said. He chose me. The preacher swallowed. He died for a woman who wasn't his wife. She smiled. Small. Sad. Wasn't he your brother? The words hit like a bullet. The preacher staggered. His Bible slipped from his fingers. Landed open. On a page stained with old blood. A photograph fell out. Faded. Torn at the corner. A boy, maybe 7, holding a wooden horse. Beside him, a girl with braids. Smiling. Lena. And behind them, a man in a preacher's collar. Younger. Clean-shaven. Still smiling. Her father. Hattie stepped closer. His name was Eli Boone, she said. Your brother. The preacher's face went white. No, he whispered. That's not possible, it is. She reached into her dress. Pulled out the wedding license. The one Silas had shown them in the square. She held it up. The ink was faded. But clear enough. Witnesses, Eli Boone, Jeremiah Whitmore Eli Boone. The preacher's brother. The man who married Lena. The man who vanished after she died. The man who never came back. The man who let them kill her. And now, here he stood. Wearing his brother's guilt like a cassock. You knew, Hattie said. You knew what they did. And you didn't stop them. He didn't answer. Just stared at the photo. At his brother's smile. At Lena's. At the horse. I thought, he choked. I thought if I prayed hard enough, God would forgive me for not acting. She stepped closer. So close he could smell the smoke still clinging to her hair. God doesn't forgive silence, she said. He remembers it. The sheriff cleared his throat. Enough. We're not here for sermons. We're here to end this. He raised his hand. 2 men stepped forward. Carrying ropes. Hattie didn't flinch. Didn't reach for the pistol. Just turned. Walked to Silas's grave. Knelt. Placed her palm on the dirt. And sang. The lullaby. Soft at first. Then louder. So the wind could carry it. So the coyotes could learn it. So the stars could remember. Sleep, little dove, the stars are near, the wind will carry you home, my dear. The preacher dropped to his knees. Cried. Not for himself. For his brother. For Lena. For the boy who once played with a wooden horse under his window. The sheriff nodded. To the men. They moved. Toward her. Ropes coiled. Feet crunching gravel. Hattie didn't look back. Just kept singing. As their shadows fell over her. As the first rope swung through the air. As the bell tolled again. Clang. This time, it didn't stop. It rang. Again. And again. And again. From the church tower. Faster. Louder. As if the bell itself had come alive. The sheriff froze. Looked up. What the hell? The preacher scrambled to his feet. Stared at the steeple. There's no one up there. But the bell kept ringing. Clang. 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 The townsfolk turned. Scrambled. Some ran. Others dropped to their knees. Because they remembered. 10 years ago. The day Lena died. The bell rang like this. Before the beating. Before the screams. Before the silence. And no one had touched it. No one had climbed the tower. No one had pulled the rope. It had rung on its own. That day. And now. Again. The sheriff turned back to Hattie. She was still singing. Still kneeling. Still untouched. The ropes hung in the air. Frozen. Like ghosts afraid to touch her. Then, the bell stopped. Silence. Thick. Heavy. The preacher fell to his knees. Weeping. "I'm sorry," he sobbed. "I'm so sorry." Hattie stood. Turned. Looked at them all. Then she spoke, quiet as a sigh. "I don't need your forgiveness." She lifted her hand. Showed them the pistol. Lena's pistol. "Just remember." She turned. Walked away. Down the hill. Into the dust. Past the burnt cabin. Past the broken fence. Past the place where Silas had once stood, alone, waiting for death. The townsfolk didn't follow. Didn't speak. Didn't breathe. They just watched. Until she disappeared. Behind the ridge. Until the wind carried the last note of her song. And the bell, silent now, began to rust. Train whistle echoes faintly. That night, Hattie slept beneath the stars. No roof. No bed. Just the coat. The pistol. The horse. And the memory of his voice. "I kept my promise." She didn't sleep long. At dawn, she heard hooves. Not many. Just one. Slow. Familiar. She turned. Saw him. The man with the scarred hand. Dead. Buried. But not gone. He rode toward her, not on a horse. On a train. The same one that had come before. The same one that had brought him. Now, it rolled to a stop at the edge of the tracks. Smoke curled from its engine. Steam hissed like a whisper. The doors opened. No one stepped out. But inside, a single lantern glowed. And on the platform, a loaf of bread. Warm. Fresh. Still steaming. She walked toward it. Hands trembling. Didn't know why. Didn't care. She picked it up. Smelled it. Wheat. Salt. Fire. Just like his. Then, a voice. From inside the train. Low. Quiet. Familiar. "Open it." She hesitated. Then tore the paper. Inside, another note. Written in charcoal. Same hand. Same shape. "You didn't need me to save you. You needed to believe you were worth saving. I loved you like I loved her. Now go live, so she can rest. S." She looked up. The train doors closed. Steam rose. The whistle blew. One long, clear note. Then the train moved. Slow. Gentle. Disappearing into the haze. She stood there. With the bread. With the note. With the ghost of his voice. And for the first time since the beating, she didn't feel broken. She felt free. She bit into the bread. It tasted like mercy. Like peace. Like love that refused to die. She walked back to the graveyard. Sat beside Silas's grave. And ate. Slowly. Each bite a vow. When she finished, she took the wooden horse. Placed it gently on his grave. Then she took Lena's pistol. Laid it beside it. Then she walked to the church. Stood before the bell tower. Reached up. Took hold of the rope. Tugged. Once. The bell rang. Clang. She tugged again. Clang. A third time. Clang. Then she turned. Walked away. No one followed. No one stopped her. Because they knew. The bell wasn't just metal. It was memory. And now, It belonged to her. Wind howls through empty rafters, 10 years passed. The town didn't die. It just forgot. They paved over the churchyard with gravel. Built a new saloon where Silas's cabin once stood. Planted roses along the road, red, sweet-smelling, useless in the dust. The bell still rang every morning at dawn. No one knew why. No one dared ask. Children whispered it was the ghost of a woman who sang to the dead. Old men shook their heads and said, "Don't speak her name. She's cursed." But Hattie Boone wasn't cursed. She was remembered. By the wind. By the coyotes. By the bread left on graves. Every spring, without fail, a woman came. Wore a faded blue dress, patched at the elbows, hem frayed from walking. Boots worn thin. Hair pulled back with a leather thong. No jewelry. No hat. Just a pistol slung low on her hip, silver-plated, engraved with vines and one word, remember. She never spoke to anyone. Never stayed long. Just walked to the graveyard, past the new fence, past the carved headstones for bankers and merchants, and knelt before the one unmarked grave. Silas Boone. No date. No name. Just dirt. And the wooden horse. Still there. Weathered. Faded. One eye gone. She brought bread. Always bread. Sometimes warm. Sometimes stale. Sometimes she sang. Sometimes she cried. Sometimes she just sat. Silent. Watching the sky. One year, a storm came early. Rain fell in sheets, thick as grief, turning the path to mud. The townsfolk hid inside. Doors locked. Curtains drawn. But she came anyway. Drenched. Hair plastered to her face. Clothes clinging like second skin. She carried no umbrella. No coat. Just the pistol. And the loaf, wrapped in oilcloth, still dry. She knelt. Placed the bread beside the grave. Then she reached into her dress. Pulled out a small leather pouch. Unwrapped it slowly. Inside, 2 wedding bands. One too big. One too small. Both tarnished. Both worn smooth by time. She lifted the larger one. Engraved inside, Hattie Mae Whitmore, March 17, 1879. She slipped it onto her finger. It fit now. Not perfectly. But close enough. She closed her eyes. Whispered, "I kept your promise." Then she placed the other ring, the one with Lena Boone, on top of the wooden horse. Let the rain wash over them both. When she stood, she saw him. A boy. 12 years old. Thin. Quiet. Eyes too old for his face. He held a basket. In it, 3 loaves. 1 warm. 2 cold. He didn't speak. Just bowed his head. And placed the basket beside hers. Then turned to leave. She called out. Soft. Like the wind. "Tommy." He froze. Didn't turn. Just nodded. "I'm not Tommy," he said. She stepped closer. Rain dripped from her lashes. "Then who are you?" He looked at her then. For the first time. His eyes, dark. Same as Silas's. Same as Lena's. "Your son," he said. She didn't breathe. Didn't move. Didn't blink. He reached into his coat. With trembling hands. Pulled out a small book. Leather-bound. Water-stained. Open to a page. Written in charcoal. Her own handwriting. "If you're reading this, I'm gone. Don't mourn me. Live. And when you find him, tell him. I loved him like I loved her. Hattie below it, a sketch of a man with a scarred hand, kneeling beside a grave, holding a child. The child, a girl, with braids, and a wooden horse. The boy swallowed. My mother was Clara, he said. She found your note after the fire. Said you were the only woman who ever sang to the dead, and made them live again. Hattie's voice cracked. How did you know I was here? He pointed to the bell tower. The bell rings every morning. For 10 years. Every day. Even when the preacher died. Even when the sheriff left. Even when the train stopped coming. He looked down. At the rings. At the horse. At night. I hear you singing. She didn't cry. Didn't reach for him. Just whispered, what's your name? He looked up. Eyes wet. Silas. She didn't say anything. Just opened her arms. Slow. Gentle. Like she was afraid he might vanish. He ran. Fell into her. Cried into her chest. She held him. Tight. As if he were the last breath she'd ever take. I thought you were dead, he sobbed. I thought I was, she whispered. They stayed like that, under the rain, until the clouds broke. Sunlight pierced through. Golden. Warm. Light touched the grave. The horse. The rings. The bread. And the boy. When he pulled away, he handed her the book. I wrote my name in it, he said. Right after yours. She opened it. There, beneath her words, a new line. In shaky ink. My name is Silas Boone. Son of Hattie Boone. Keeper of the bell. Not forgotten. She closed the book. Pressed it to her heart. Then she took his hand. Walked with him to the edge of the cemetery. Where the train tracks rusted into the earth. She pointed east. There's a town 20 miles from here, she said. Called Cedar Hollow. They have a school. A bakery. A bell tower. He looked at her. Will you come with me? She looked at the grave. At the horse. At the bell tower, now just stones. No, he didn't beg. Didn't argue. Just nodded. Like he'd known all along. She reached into her dress. Pulled out the last thing she'd saved. A single button. Silver. Engraved with a tiny bird. She pressed it into his palm. It belonged to Silas, she said. He wore it the day he rode into town. He closed his fingers around it. Why not come? She looked at the grave. At the horse. At the rings. At some point, she said, you stop running from the past, and start carrying it. She kissed his forehead. Then turned. Walked back toward the hills. Back toward the bell. Back toward the silence. He didn't follow. Just stood there. Until she disappeared. Behind the ridge. Then he opened his hand. Looked at the button. And whispered, thank you, Mama. That night, the bell rang. Not once. Not twice. But 7 times. 7 chimes. Slow. Deliberate. Each one echoing across the prairie. Like a heartbeat. Like a prayer. The next morning, the townsfolk gathered at the graveyard. Not to bury. Not to judge. To see. Because someone had carved something into the stone beside Silas's grave. Something no one had done in 10 years. A name. Carved deep. Clean. Bold. Hattie Boone beneath it, a single line. In smaller letters. She sang until the world remembered. And beside the name, a small carving. Of a wooden horse. With one eye. And a bell above it. The preacher, now old, bent, gray-haired, stood before it. Tears streaking his cheeks. He reached into his coat. Pulled out a bundle. Wrapped in cloth. Inside, a journal. Yellowed. Filled with names. All women. All beaten. All abandoned. All saved. By whispers. By bread. By songs. Each entry ended the same way, she sang. So I didn't have to. He looked up. At the crowd. At the children. At the widow who used to bring Hattie scraps. At the boy who now carried her name. I didn't know, he whispered. I didn't know she was doing this, for all of them. The wind picked up. Carried the scent of rain. Of earth. Of burning sage. And far off, faint but clear, the sound of a woman singing. Not loud. Not proud. Just, there. Sleep, little dove, the stars are near. No one moved. No one spoke. They just listened. Until the song faded. Into the dust. Into the sky. Into the silence. Decades passed. The town changed. Railroads expanded. New houses rose. The graveyard became a park. The bell tower fell. But every spring, on the anniversary of the day Silas Boone died, a woman would appear. Old now. White-haired. Walking slow. With a cane. And a basket. She'd place bread beside the marker. Sit. Sing. Then leave. No one knew her name. No one asked. Because they'd heard the story. From their mothers. Their grandmothers. From the old preacher's journal, now displayed in the library. Some women don't need monuments. They become the wind. The bread. The bell. The song. 1 year, a little girl followed her. 6 years old. Barefoot. Clutching a wooden horse. One eye missing. She watched the woman. Waited. Then asked, "Are you Hattie?" The woman smiled. Not with teeth. With her eyes. "Yes, sweetheart. Did you love him?" The woman looked at the grave. At the horse. At the bell tower ruins. "Yes. Did he love you?" The woman took the girl's hand. Led her to the edge of the grass. Pointed to the horizon. Where the train tracks vanished into dust. "He loved me more than his own life." The girl whispered, "Then why didn't he stay?" The woman didn't answer right away. Just sat. And sang. Low. Soft. As if the wind were listening. "Sleep, little dove, the stars are near, the wind will carry you home, my dear." When she finished, she leaned down. Kissed the girl's forehead. Then placed the wooden horse into her hands. "Because," she said, "some loves aren't meant to be kept. They're meant to be passed on." The girl hugged the horse. Nodded. Then ran off. Down the hill. Toward the town. Toward the bakery. Toward the bell tower ruins. Where a new bell, cast in bronze, had just been hung. Children gathered. Laughter ringing. And when the first chime sounded, it echoed like a lullaby. The old woman didn't move. Just sat. Eyes closed. Hands folded. Breathing slow. As if waiting. For the wind. For the train. For the boy who carried her name. Somewhere beyond the ridge, a whistle blew. Long low. Familiar. She smiled. One last time. Then she let go. closed her eyes, and slept. Under the trees. Beside the grave. With the bread. With the horse. With the memory. And the song. Wind howls softly, no one buried her. No one carved her name. They didn't need to. Because every morning, the bell still rings. And every spring, a loaf of bread appears. On the grave. On the bench. On the windowsill of the old church. And sometimes, if you listen real close, you can hear a woman singing. Not loud. Not proud. Just, there. And if you're lucky, you'll find a silver button. In your pocket. Or under your pillow. With a bird carved into it. And beneath it, 2 words. I loved her. And you'll know. She's still here. Not as a ghost. Not as a legend. But as a promise. Made in blood. Kept in bread. Sung in silence. And carried, always, by those brave enough to remember.